The glass of champagne felt cold in Willa Donovan's hand as she stood on the marble balcony overlooking the glittering city skyline, knowing this would be her last night in this world of excess and privilege. She had made up her mind 3 hours ago, packing her single suitcase while the household staff prepared for yet another lavish dinner party downstairs. 6 months as a private art curator for the Morrison estate had been enough to show her that money could not fill the emptiness she felt in these pristine halls, no matter how beautiful the paintings or how generous her salary. Tomorrow morning, she would hand in her resignation and return to her modest life in Portland, where authenticity mattered more than net worth. The party below hummed with conversation and classical music, but Willa remained on the balcony, savoring her final moments of solitude. She had not yet met the elusive Kieran Morrison, the billionaire owner of this sprawling Seattle mansion. He traveled constantly for his international hotel empire, and she had been hired by his estate manager, communicating only through emails about which pieces to acquire or display. The job had seemed perfect initially, combining her passion for art with financial security, but the isolation had worn her down. She missed teaching eager students at the community college, missed conversations that felt real rather than transactional. "I thought I was the only one who found these parties suffocating." A deep voice came from the doorway, startling her. Willa turned to find a tall man in an impeccably tailored dark suit, his brown hair slightly tousled as though he had been running his hands through it. His gray eyes held an intensity that made her breath catch, but also a warmth that put her immediately at ease. He looked to be in his early 30s, with strong features and a presence that commanded attention without arrogance. "I did not hear you come out," Willa said, setting down her champagne glass on the stone railing. "Are you one of the guests?" Something like that. He stepped closer, leaning against the railing beside her. "What brings you out here instead of inside with everyone else, honestly?" "I am trying to memorize the view. It is my last night here." The words came out more candidly than she intended, but something about this stranger made her want to be honest. His expression shifted, curiosity replacing the casual politeness. "Leaving Morrison's employ. I heard he finally hired someone competent for his collection. The previous curator was apparently terrible." Willa laughed despite herself. "I hope I did better than terrible, but competence is not the issue. This life is just not for me." The isolation, the superficiality, the endless acquisitions without anyone actually appreciating the art. "I became a curator because I love helping people connect with beauty, understand the stories behind each piece. Here, the paintings are just investments gathering dust in empty rooms." "That sounds like a miserable way to work." He studied her face with genuine interest. "What will you do instead?" "Go back to teaching. The pay is awful and the facilities need updating, but at least I will be making a difference. At least I will feel like myself again." Willa met his gaze, surprised by how easy it was to talk to him. "Sorry, I do not usually pour my heart out to strangers at parties. Maybe strangers are easier to talk to." His smile transformed his entire face, revealing a playfulness that contrasted with his formal appearance. "I am Kieran, by the way. Willa." She shook his extended hand, his grip firm and warm. A flutter of attraction stirred in her chest, unexpected and unwelcome given her imminent departure. "Are you in the hotel business too? Everyone here seems to be connected to that world somehow." "You could say I am familiar with it." Kieran's eyes held a hint of amusement. "But I would rather hear more about you. What kind of art do you love most?" For the next hour they talked as the party continued without them. Willa found herself describing her favorite periods and artists, listening as Kieran revealed a surprising depth of knowledge about architecture and design. He asked thoughtful questions, challenged her opinions respectfully, and made her laugh with dry observations about the pretentious art world. When she shivered in the cool evening air, he shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders without interrupting their conversation about Renaissance techniques. "I should probably go back inside." Willa said reluctantly as the clock tower in the distance chimed 11. I still need to finish a few things before tomorrow, before you disappear back to Portland. Kieran straightened, his expression growing serious. Can I ask you something? If the situation were different, if this job offered what you needed, would you stay? That is a big hypothetical. Willa handed back his jacket, immediately missing its warmth. But honestly, I do not know. I have never been good at staying in places that do not feel like home, no matter how beautiful they are. What if someone wanted to make it feel like home? The question hung between them, loaded with meaning she could not quite decipher. Before Willa could respond, the estate manager appeared in the doorway, his face flushing when he saw Kieran. Mr. Morrison, I apologize for the interruption. The Singapore investors are asking for you. The world tilted slightly. Willa stared at Kieran, understanding crashing over her like a wave. You are Kieran Morrison, the Kieran Morrison. I tried to tell you my name. His expression remained steady, watching her carefully. You did not make the connection. Because I assumed you would be inside holding court, not hiding on balconies. Willa felt heat rise in her cheeks, mortified by everything she had said. She had basically told her employer that his lifestyle was empty and meaningless, that working for him was suffocating. I should apologize for what I said. Please do not. Kieran stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. Everything you said was honest and I needed to hear it. Do you know how rare honesty is in my world? Everyone tells me what they think I want to hear. You just told me the truth. He glanced at the waiting manager, then back at Willa. Will you meet me tomorrow morning before you leave? 8 o'clock in the gallery, please. Willa nodded, not trusting her voice. She watched him disappear back into the party, his absence leaving the balcony feeling suddenly empty and cold. The champagne glass remained on the railing, forgotten, as she tried to process what had just happened. She had spent an hour falling for a stranger who turned out to be the billionaire she had never met, the man whose world she was desperate to escape. Sleep proved impossible that night. Willa lay in her comfortable bedroom in the guest wing, replaying every moment of their conversation. The connection had felt so real, so natural. But had it all been some kind of test? Did billionaires play games with their employees? She knew nothing about Kieran Morrison beyond his business reputation and the cold emails about art acquisitions. Yet the man on the balcony had seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts, her dreams, her passion for teaching. His eyes had held something she could not define but felt drawn to anyway. At 7:30, Willa dragged herself out of bed and dressed in simple jeans and a cream sweater, her long dark hair pulled into a practical ponytail. If this was truly her last morning here, she would face it as herself, not dressed to impress anyone. She grabbed her packed suitcase and made her way to the gallery, a soaring 2-story room filled with carefully curated pieces she had selected over the past 6 months. Kieran was already there, standing before a painting she had acquired just last week, a contemporary piece by an emerging Portland artist. He had changed into dark jeans and a gray Henley that made him look younger, more approachable than the businessman from the party. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and the smile that crossed his face sent warmth through her entire body. You came. He sounded relieved, as though he had genuinely worried she might not show. You asked me to. Willa set down her suitcase, feeling suddenly self-conscious. Though I am not sure what we need to discuss. I already submitted my resignation letter last night, and I have arranged for someone to continue managing the collection until you find a permanent replacement. I do not want a replacement. Kieran closed the distance between them. Willa, I spent most of last night thinking about what you said. You are right. This collection has become just another asset, something to show off to investors and impress business associates. I have been so focused on building my empire that I forgot why I started collecting art in the first place. Why did you start? She found herself genuinely curious. My mother was a painter. Not famous, just someone who created because she had to, because art was how she understood the world. His expression softened with memory. She died when I was 22, right before my father's hotel business collapsed. I spent the next decade rebuilding everything from nothing, proving I could succeed where he failed. Along the way, I started buying art, telling myself it was to honor her memory. But somewhere it became just another acquisition, another way to display wealth. Willa felt her resistance cracking. Kieran, I appreciate you sharing that, but it does not change my situation. I do not belong in this world. Then let me come into yours. The words rushed out, surprising them both. I know this sounds crazy, we just met. But that conversation last night was the most real interaction I have had in years. You made me remember what matters. And I cannot let you walk away without at least trying to show you that not everything here is superficial and empty. What are you suggesting? Willa's heart hammered against her ribs. Give me 1 week. Let me prove that I can be someone worth staying for. Not as your employer, I will have that paperwork handled today, just as someone who wants to know you better. Kieran's gray eyes held hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. If after 7 days you still want to leave, I will personally drive you to Portland and never bother you again. But if there is even a small chance that what I felt last night was mutual, do not we owe it to ourselves to find out? Every logical part of Willa's brain screamed that this was absurd. She had known this man for a few hours. He was a billionaire with a completely different life, different values, different everything. She should pick up her suitcase and walk out the door, return to her sensible existence where heartbreak did not lurk around every corner. But her heart remembered the easy conversation, the genuine laughter, the way he had looked at her like she was the only person in the world worth listening to. She remembered the loneliness that had driven her to resign in the first place, and the unexpected spark of hope that maybe, impossibly, she had found something real in the last place she expected. 1 week, Willa heard herself say, but I am not staying here in the mansion. If you want to spend time with me, it has to be in the real world, not this bubble of privilege. Kieran's entire face lit up. Deal. Do you trust me to plan today? I suppose I will find out. She tried to sound skeptical but could not quite hide her smile. 2 hours later, Willa found herself in the passenger seat of Kieran's surprisingly modest SUV, heading into downtown Seattle. He had changed into worn jeans and a leather jacket, looking more like a graduate student than a billionaire. The drive was filled with easy conversation and terrible pop music that he sang along to without self-consciousness, making her laugh so hard she had to wipe tears from her eyes. Their first stop was Pike Place Market, where tourists and locals mingled among the vendors. Kieran led her through the crowds with the confidence of someone who knew the area well, stopping at a tiny coffee shop tucked away from the main thoroughfare. Best espresso in the city, he told her, ordering them both drinks. I used to come here every morning when I was rebuilding the business. Sometimes I still do when I need to remember where I started. They wandered through the market, sampling cheese and fresh bread, watching street performers, and talking about everything and nothing. Kieran told her about growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Tacoma, his father's struggles with the failing hotel business, the years of 80-hour work weeks to turn things around. Willa shared stories about her childhood in a small Oregon town, her decision to pursue art history despite everyone telling her it was impractical, the joy she found in teaching students who thought they did not understand art. My best moment last semester was watching a football player have a breakdown in front of a Rothko painting, Willa said, gesturing with her coffee cup. He kept saying he did not get why it mattered, why anyone cared about rectangles of color. Then suddenly he just stopped talking and stared at it for 10 minutes. When he finally looked at me, he had tears in his eyes. He said he did not know why, but the painting made him feel less alone. That is exactly what art should do. Kieran had stopped walking, his full attention on her. That is what you should be doing, not cataloging purchases for someone who barely looks at them. I thought we were not talking about work this week. Willa bumped his shoulder lightly with hers, surprised by how natural the gesture felt. You are right, no work talk. He checked his watch. Are you afraid of heights? 20 minutes later, they stood at the top of the Space Needle, the city spread below them in afternoon sunshine. Willa pressed close to the windows, marveling at the view, while Kieran watched her with an expression she could not quite read. What? She asked, suddenly self-conscious. I am just thinking how different this is from last night. Yesterday I did not know you existed. Today I cannot imagine not knowing you. He moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Is that completely insane? Probably. Willa turned to face him, her back against the glass. But I feel it too. This weird sense that I have been waiting for this conversation, this person, without knowing it. Kieran reached up slowly, giving her time to move away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The simple gesture sent electricity through her entire body. I want to kiss you, but I do not want to move too fast and scare you away. I am terrified, Willa admitted, but not of moving fast. I am afraid of how much I already care after less than a day. That does not make sense. Nothing about this makes sense. His hand cupped her cheek gently. But I stopped overthinking it about 3 hours ago. When their lips met, the rest of the world fell away. The kiss started soft and questioning, then deepened as Willa rose on her toes and wrapped her arms around his neck. Kieran pulled her closer, one hand tangled in her hair, the other at the small of her back. Time seemed to suspend in that perfect moment, with the city sprawling below and possibility stretching endlessly ahead. They broke apart slowly, both slightly breathless. Kieran rested his forehead against hers, his eyes still closed. Okay, definitely not imagining this. Definitely not. Willa laughed, dizzy with happiness and terror in equal measure. The rest of the day passed in a blur of perfect moments. They had lunch at a hole-in-the-wall Thai restaurant where Kieran was greeted by name, walked through a sculpture park debating the merits of modern art, and watched the sunset from a beach in West Seattle. Conversation flowed endlessly, punctuated by lingering glances and casual touches that felt charged with meaning. By the time Kieran dropped her off at a boutique hotel in the city, Willa's face hurt from smiling. This is where you are staying. She looked at the elegant but understated building, so different from the Morrison mansion. I keep a suite here. The mansion is impressive, but it never felt like home. This place does. He walked her to the entrance. Your room is ready whenever you want to go up. No pressure to see me tomorrow if you need space to think. What time should I be ready? Willa asked, earning a grin that made her heart skip. 10. Dress comfortable. The week that followed felt like existing in an alternate reality. Kieran picked her up each morning, and they explored Seattle and the surrounding areas like teenagers playing hooky from real life. He took her hiking in the Cascades, where they had a picnic by a waterfall and talked for hours about dreams and fears. They spent an entire day in his favorite bookstore, reading passages aloud to each other and arguing passionately about literary merit. He brought her to a charity gala for youth arts programs, where Willa met the teenagers whose education his foundation funded, and she watched him interact with them with genuine warmth and interest. Every evening, Kieran walked her to her hotel room and kissed her goodnight with increasing difficulty in pulling away. They had not slept together, both seeming to understand that crossing that line would change everything. But the tension built between them, charged and electric, until Willa found herself thinking about him constantly when they were apart. On the 5th day, Kieran took her to his mother's art studio, a small space in Ballard that he had kept exactly as she left it. Canvases lined the walls, paint tubes still scattered across the work table. Willa walked through the room reverently, studying each piece with her curator's eye. She was talented, Willa said softly. Really talented. These should be in galleries. I have kept them here just for me. Selfish, I guess. Kieran stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. You are the first person I have brought here since she died. Willa crossed to him, taking his hands. Thank you for sharing this with me, for sharing her with me. I want to share everything with you. The raw honesty in his voice made her chest tight. Willa, I know it has only been 5 days, but I am falling in love with you. Actually, I think I started falling that first night on the balcony. Every moment since has just confirmed it. Kieran. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. You do not have to say anything back, I just needed you to know. He pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her waist. 2 more days left in our week, then I have to let you decide. But Willa was not sure she could wait 2 more days. The feelings overwhelming her were too big, too intense. She had never believed in love at first sight, had always thought it was a romantic fantasy. Yet here she stood, in a dead woman's art studio, absolutely certain that she had found something extraordinary with this complicated, wonderful man. I am falling too, she said against his chest. And it terrifies me. We can be terrified together. Kieran tilted her chin up, kissing her with a tenderness that made her want to cry. Day 6 brought unexpected rain, so they spent it at Kieran's hotel suite, ordering room service and watching old movies. Willa wore one of his shirts, too big on her frame, while he built a fire in the fireplace. The domesticity of it felt natural, like they had been doing this for years instead of days. Tell me honestly, Willa said during a lull in the conversation, what happens after this week? You have a billion-dollar company to run. I have a teaching job waiting in Portland. We cannot exist in this bubble forever. Kieran set down his wine glass, his expression serious. I have been thinking about that. Here is what I propose. I split my time between Seattle and Portland. The company practically runs itself with my executive team, and most of my work can be done remotely. I buy a place in Portland near wherever you want to live. I come to your classes if you will let me, become a donor to your college's arts program, and we build a life that makes sense for both of us. You would do that. Restructure your entire life for someone you have known a week. Willa sat up, searching his face for any hint of doubt. I would do that for you specifically, yes. Kieran took her hand, threading their fingers together. Willa, I have spent 15 years building a company, accumulating wealth and success, and everything I thought I wanted, but I have never felt as alive as I do with you. If that means redefining what my life looks like, then that is an easy choice. I cannot ask you to give up everything. Her protest sounded weak even to her own ears. You are not asking, I am offering. He moved closer, his free hand cupping her face. But I need to know if you are feeling even a fraction of what I am. Because if this is one-sided, tell me now before I fall any deeper. Willa answered by kissing him, pouring everything she felt into the contact. The kiss quickly intensified, months of loneliness and longing meeting days of building tension. She found herself in his lap, his hands on her waist, her fingers tangled in his hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the decision felt inevitable. Stay tonight, Kieran said, his voice rough. Not because of our deal, not because you owe me anything, but because you want to. I want to. Willa kissed him again, softer. I want everything with you, and that should probably scare me more than it does. They moved to the bedroom slowly, savoring every moment. Kieran was careful and attentive, learning what made her gasp and sigh, treating her like she was precious. Willa had been with other men before, but nothing compared to this, to the feeling of being completely seen and valued. They made love as the rain pattered against the windows, and afterward lay tangled together, talking until dawn about the future they were starting to build together. The 7th day arrived too quickly. They spent it in comfortable silence, hiking one of Kieran's favorite trails and having lunch at a lodge overlooking the mountains. As the sun began setting, they returned to the spot where everything began, the balcony at the Morrison mansion. So, Kieran said, leaning against the railing where they had first met, your week is up. What is your decision? Willa pretended to consider, tapping her chin thoughtfully. Well, I did tell you I am not good at staying in places that do not feel like home. His face fell slightly before she continued. But I think I have been looking for home in the wrong places. It is not about the location or the job or the lifestyle. She moved into his arms, looking up at him with absolute certainty. Home is wherever you are, so yes, I am staying. Not for the mansion or the money or any of this. She gestured at the sprawling estate. I am staying for us, for whatever we build together. Kieran lifted her off her feet, spinning her around as she laughed. When he set her down, his eyes were suspiciously bright. I love you. Completely, terrifyingly, forever. I love you too. Willa pulled him down for a kiss that tasted like promises and new beginnings. The next few months were a whirlwind of change and compromise. Kieran kept his word, buying a beautiful craftsman house in Portland's Hawthorne district. He set up a home office and flew to Seattle only when absolutely necessary, letting his executive team handle more of the daily operations. Willa returned to teaching, but also began curating smaller, more intimate shows focused on emerging artists. They turned the Morrison Mansion's gallery into a rotating exhibition space for students and unknown talents, hosting monthly events where art became accessible rather than exclusive. Kieran proved to be an enthusiastic supporter of her work, attending her classes when his schedule allowed and funding scholarships for promising art students. He loved watching her teach, seeing her passion come alive as she helped others discover beauty in unexpected places. Willa, in turn, helped him reconnect with the human side of his business, encouraging him to meet the employees at his hotels, to understand their stories and struggles. They traveled together when they could, exploring cities through their art museums and hole-in-the-wall restaurants, rather than five-star establishments. Kieran taught Willa about wine and architecture. She taught him about color theory and artistic movements. They argued passionately about abstract expressionism and made up even more passionately afterward. Life felt full in a way neither had experienced before. 10 months after that first night on the balcony, Kieran planned an elaborate surprise. He told Willa they were attending a gallery opening for one of her former students, which was true but incomplete. When they arrived at the converted warehouse space, Willa gasped to see her name on the banner outside. "What is this?" She turned to Kieran, confused. "Your gallery." "Well, our gallery, if you want it to be." He watched her nervously, more anxious than she had ever seen him. "I know you love teaching and you can keep doing that, but you also deserve a space to showcase the artists you believe in, to build something meaningful. The building is yours, funded through a trust, so you never have to worry about finances. Do with it whatever you want." Willa walked through the space in a daze, taking in the exposed brick walls, the perfect lighting, the careful layout designed for maximum impact. Her former students were there, along with friends from the college and several local artists whose work she had championed. In the center of the main room hung a painting she recognized, one of Kieran's mother's pieces that he had finally agreed to share with the world. "This is too much." Tears streamed down her face, overwhelmed by his generosity and thoughtfulness. "It is exactly right." Kieran pulled her close, unconcerned about the watching crowd. "You helped me remember why art matters. Now I want to help you share that with everyone else." The gallery opening was a massive success, but Willa barely remembered any of it. She kept finding herself looking at Kieran across the room, catching his eye and feeling that same electric connection from their first meeting. When the last guest finally left and they were alone in the space, Kieran took her hand and led her to a small piece she had not noticed earlier. It was a simple charcoal sketch of the Seattle skyline at night, viewed from a balcony. In the foreground, two figures stood close together, faces turned toward each other rather than the view. "Did you draw this?" Willa asked, amazed. "I am terrible at art, but I had to try to capture that moment. The moment my whole life changed." Kieran knelt down on one knee, pulling a small box from his jacket pocket. "Willa Donovan, you told me once that you are not good at staying in places that do not feel like home. I want to be your home, your safe place, your partner in everything for the rest of our lives. Will you marry me?" The ring was simple and perfect, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds that caught the gallery lights. But Willa barely looked at it, too focused on the man before her, this incredible person who had given her reasons to stay and reasons to hope for forever. "Yes," she said through happy tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." Kieran stood and kissed her deeply, both of them laughing and crying at once. They stayed in the gallery until late into the night, making plans and dreaming about the future. For once, neither felt the need to rush toward what came next. They had found each other in the most unexpected way, and that was enough. The wedding took place 9 months later in the garden of their Portland home, a small, intimate ceremony attended by close friends and family. Willa wore a simple silk dress that made Kieran's breath catch when she walked down the aisle. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to always choose each other, to build a life based on honesty and shared passion, to never lose sight of what truly mattered. During the reception, Kieran pulled Willa aside to a quiet corner of the garden. "Remember when you said you were leaving because you did not belong in my world? I remember thinking I was making the smart choice." Willa leaned against him, perfectly content. "Turns out I was almost the stupidest I have ever been." "I am glad I convinced you otherwise." He kissed the top of her head. "You know what the best part is? We did not just fall in love. We built something real, something that works for both of us. This is not your world or my world." "It is our world, Willa repeated, loving the sound of it. "I like that." 2 years later, Willa stood in their nursery, holding their newborn daughter and humming softly. Kieran appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas despite it being mid-afternoon, his hair sticking up adorably from their brief nap. "How is she?" he whispered, crossing to wrap his arms around them both. "Perfect. Absolutely perfect." Willa looked down at the tiny face, overwhelmed by love. They had named her Alina after Kieran's mother, and already Willa could see hints of the Morrison determination in her expressions. Just like her mother. Kieran kissed Willa's temple. "Can you believe this is our life now?" "Sometimes I still think I am going to wake up back in that lonely mansion, packing my bags to leave." Willa leaned back against his chest. "Then I remember that you gave me every reason to stay and I gave you permission to love me. Best decision either of us ever made." They stood there together as the afternoon sun streamed through the windows, painting everything golden. The gallery was thriving, showcasing 3 new artists this season. Kieran's company had just been recognized for its employee satisfaction programs and ethical business practices. But more than any professional success, they had built a home filled with love, laughter, and art that actually meant something. Later that evening, after Alina was asleep and they sat together on their porch watching the Portland rain, Kieran pulled Willa close and said, "Thank you for staying. For giving us a chance when you had every reason to run." "Thank you for giving me reasons to stay," Willa responded, kissing him softly. "For seeing me, really seeing me, and loving what you found, always," Kieran promised, "for the rest of our lives." And he kept that promise through the challenges and triumphs that filled their years together. They added 2 more children to their family, a son named Thomas and another daughter named Grace. The gallery expanded into a full arts education center, providing free classes to underserved communities. Kieran gradually stepped back from the hotel empire, focusing instead on philanthropic work that aligned with their shared values. But through all the changes and growth, the core of their relationship remained the same as that first night on the balcony. 2 people who found each other unexpectedly, who chose each other daily, who built a love story that was real and lasting and worth every risk they took. Willa never regretted her decision to stay. How could she, when staying meant finding home in the arms of someone who loved her completely? When it meant building a life that honored both their dreams rather than sacrificing one for the other? She had been ready to walk away from everything, convinced that his world held nothing for her. Instead, she discovered that love was not about adapting to someone else's world or making them adapt to yours. It was about creating something entirely new together, something that belonged to both of you equally. And Kieran never stopped being grateful that he had found her on that balcony, that he had recognized something precious and fought to keep it. He had spent years accumulating success and wealth, but none of it compared to the richness of a life shared with someone who truly understood him. Someone who challenged him to be better, who reminded him why it all mattered in the first place. Their love story became the foundation for everything else they built, the proof that the best things in life happen when you are brave enough to take a chance on the unexpected. What began as a woman planning to leave became a lifetime of choosing to stay, not because she had to, but because she found every reason in the world to remain right where she was, with the man who had captured her heart in a single evening and spent every day since proving he deserved to keep it.